All right, so biology. Let's start going over quickly. This is the first part, the first lecture. So I need to catch up one more lecture from last week. So what is bio? Bio is basically, it's stated here on this slide, it's the science of life. Science of life. So basically biology deals with what? What do you think with? So basically biology deals with everything that is live. What could be a live thing? Sadie, do you know what's a live thing? Give me an example of one live thing.
Plants.
Plants. Anything else?
People.
People, yeah, that's the easiest one. So the people also. So that's all what biology basically study. Now there's other sciences that deal with other things like anthropology or archaeology, which we don't deal with that. So basically biology studies the structures, the function, and the relationship between living organisms. Now, living organisms are pretty much diverse. How do we know that these organisms are diverse? When you look at them, they look different, right? You look at a human, a rabbit, a plant, a dog. They don't look the same. So they are very diverse. Now, even though they are diverse, they share certain characteristics. What are those characteristics? They have a nose, they have nostrils, they have eyes, some of them have ears, right? Like prominent ears like humans do. So they do share some common characteristics. They have liver, they have internal organs like us. The mammals, the large organisms. Now, when you go to smaller organisms, they don't have. But that means what? That basically they are further apart in the evolution order, okay? Now, organism or all organism on Earth is believed that actually evolved from the common ancestor. Now, which one, have any idea, any of you, 2, 3 that are here, that which one is the common ancestor? Have any idea? It's called cyanobacteria. That is the bacteria, cyanobacteria. That is the common ancestor belief. Now, this cyanobacteria is very interesting because it can photosynthesize at the same time, even though it's a bacteria. Now, when we look at the overall, the planet itself, we look at the levels of organization. Now, how are they basically organized? Now we can start from small to large or from large to small, but here the way I have them, I start from large level towards smaller level, and the next few slides is going to get even smaller. The largest level is called biosphere. Biosphere, that's basically the whole Earth comprised of land and water. Then as you go in the biosphere, we break it down into actual ecosystem. Actually, this is how we have them. An ecosystem is the next one. Now, what is an ecosystem? If this is the whole Earth, ecosystem would be these large parts that you see right here. An example would be tropical forest. Could be desert. Any other one? Can you guys give me another one? Another ecosystem that you think of? Aquatic ecosystem. Aquatic means water. What other ecosystem? Any other ecosystem do you guys think of?
Atmosphere.
Atmosphere is not, because atmosphere is not linked, is not a living thing, Louise. We talk about living things here, okay?
Okay.
There's other forests out there. They're called taiga, like the Christmas tree, the pine forest, the really large swath that you see in Canada. But all these ones are basically part of the ecosystem. Then the next level of organization, it's community. In a community, basically, in a community, you break down this ecosystem right here. Now in this tropical forest, you have different organisms living there. Now all these organisms, they form populations. So here you might find one small population, here another population of a different organism, here another one, and so forth and so on. Basically, this is populations which will live in the ecosystem. So basically a community is made up of many populations that interact with each other. So community, it's many populations. To give you an example, now in Mansac, you have, when you look at Mansac or Walnut area, what populations do you guys think we have around there? Coyotes. Have you seen coyotes around Walnut? Most likely you did. Mountain lions, right? You've seen rats around there, right? You've seen, what else? Birds, a lot of birds around there. So all these ones are part of populations that are found in the community. Then you have population. So what is a population now? It's basically the same species that you have. It's the same species that you have. So what is same species? All coyotes are part of the same species, right? Rats are part of the same species or part of the same population. So basically now if you look backwards, a bunch of populations populate this ecosystem. Now, when you have many population populating an ecosystem, this part right here, the main part, it is basically the community. Does it make sense? All right, here you can see population, bunch of dudes in water or a bunch of humans in water. Here you have a community. You see how they are interconnected? Who is usually at the bottom of the community? Any of you have any idea? Usually the small organ is very, very tiny. Since this is water or oceans, phytoplankton it's usually, and zooplankton is at the bottom. So the larger one feed off the smaller ones. Is that clear? Okay. Here you have the ecosystem. Now, when you look at the ecosystem here, you see what? Many communities taking part. You have the land here, you have the water right here. And at the bottom, you have the non-living part. This is the non-living part. So in ecosystem, you have the living part interacted with the non-living part, okay? That's what you have in the ecosystem. Now, let's go a little bit the other way. Right at the bottom of the biological organization. At the bottom of it, it's the cell. Cell is the basic unit that makes up life, the basic unit. Every organism, anything that's considered a living organism, it's made up of cells. Now, when you get similar cells, similar means what? Same. Or mostly likely the same. They're not going to look exactly the same. That's why it's called similar. But similar cells form tissues. An example would be pulmonary tissue. Can you guys give me another example? Cardiac tissue. Cardiac tissue. Cardiac. Cardiac is found in the heart, right? Hepatic tissue. Hepatic tissue, it's found in the liver. Now, when you get all these tissues performing a specific function together, they form the actual organs. One organ is lungs, then you can have liver, then you can have kidneys, then you can have what else? Stomach. All these ones are made up of many tissues. Is that clear? Now, all these organs, when you put them together, what do they form? The organ system, and eventually they form the complex organism. Is that clear? So when these ones work together, they make up the organ system, and all the organ system together make up the organism. Is that clear? Now, if you notice right here, I put at the bottom, complex organization together form the higher level. Start followed by population. After organism, it's followed by population, then community, then ecosystem, and at the end you have the biodiversity. which we started, biosphere, not biodiversity, sorry, biosphere. It started right there at the top. Is that clear? So this is biosphere here. A cell looks like this. Oops, I thought I had 2 cells here, but I guess I have only 1 now. So this is a cell, that's what it looks like. Now, when you look inside the cell, there is a bunch of these little structures, you're gonna find them there, but all these ones are all these structures here make this cell living organism or functional. Now, when you look here, what type of cell this one is? Do you guys think an animal cell or a plant cell?
Plant cell.
How do you know that?
Because it has chloroplast.
There you go. It has this thing right there. It has the chloroplast, which is green, basically. That's how we know. If you wouldn't see that green right there, you wouldn't call it a plant cell. It would be an animal cell, most likely, okay? Here you see the tissue. So remember, I told you they are similar. See right here, similar cells. Why are they? You see, they don't look exactly the same, but they look the same. But they're not exactly the same. See, this is a little smaller, kind of a little different shape a little bit because they are pushed there. But they are the same, and they have the same function at the end, the same function. All these cells here have the same function, the epithelial tissue. Nervous tissue have exactly the same. All nervous tissue, they are not exactly the same. They are just similar, and they have the same function. Muscle tissue, connective tissue, okay? Now here you can see the organs that make up these are for humans. So here you can see the organs that make up the humans, brain, stomach, and all the other ones. Organ systems, they work together. You can see actually how a human being looks inside. Now, if you notice here, liver, it's kind of like, look at this picture here and try to learn a little bit about yourself, about digestive system. What it shows you right here basically are parts of the digestive system. Now we're going to use these ones in lab too. So please go over and try to kind of like understand them. Starting from right here where the head would be, because this here, it will be I really suck at drawing, so it's okay. Here is the neck, and then right here you got the arms of this guy. So start from the mouth, going down to esophagus, followed by the stomach. Then you have the small intestine, large intestine. Then you're gonna have the rectum, and then you're gonna have the anus. And right here you have the accessory organs. Liver, it's considered accessory organs, and also right here, which is not really labeled here, but this part right here, this is the pancreas, okay? Now, how are organs classified? We mentioned the first slide right here. They are very diverse. These organisms are very diverse. So basically they don't look exactly the same. Now, since they share common characteristics or certain characteristics, probably they evolved from each other. Now we have to classify them, because if you don't classify them, it's a mumbo jumbo, it's a jambalaya, it's a mix right there. So if we classify them, the process of classifying the organism, it's called taxonomy, or the discipline. It's called taxonomy. Now, taxonomy has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 levels. It starts for the most inclusive, or the one with many, let's call them many organisms, almost everything. As you get towards the bottom, you have the least inclusive, which is just basically once you get to the bottom, there is only one type of organism, or one population, or one organism right here only. Now, when you get to species, which is right at the bottom, there's only one type of organism. Genus, there could be many, more than 2, 3, 4, 5. An example, Canis, Canis is the genus. Now you have Canis latrans, Canis lupus, and Canis domesticus. Any of you have any idea what this is? Canis is the dog. canis or dog. Latrans is coyote. Lupus is wolf. Domestic is the pet that you have at home, the one that you just keep hearing barking in the background. That's the domesticus. So canis latrans, lupus domesticus. Now this part right here would actually be the species. So when you look right here, there's only one species when you classify the domestic dog, canis. Canis would be the genus, and domesticus would be the actual species, okay? In the case here that you see Homo sapiens. Homo is the genus. There is Homo hominidi, whatever it's, there is different genuses there in the evolutionary trait, scale, not trait. But here, sapiens would be the humans. That's the only species, sapiens. That's only humans, okay? Now, as you go up, you keep including more and more organisms for each of this classification that you have right here. Now, when you get to kingdoms, there is 4 main kingdoms. Oops, right here, 4 kingdoms: Protista, fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. Animalia, it's animals, all the animals that you know. Plantae, it's plants. Fungi, funguses, and Protista is these little bugs, like kind of like one of them that you see right here. These little bugs that survive in, they are found in what? These microorganisms, okay? As you go towards the top, right at the top, you have the domain. Now for domains, there are actually 3 domains. There is archaea and bacteria, which both of them are bacteria. So archaea and bacteria, both of them are bacteria. What is the difference between them? This archaea, it's very old and lives in extreme conditions, because that's where they start developing. Very extreme condition. Now, where do you get extreme conditions? Have any idea where you guys can get extreme conditions? Extreme conditions you get usually at the bottom of the oceans, next to volcanoes, where there is like environment that you cannot breathe because it's very toxic. Where there is high salinity, that's where it's very extreme environment, because not too many organisms can adapt and survive to them, okay? So these ones are microorganisms that actually are called archaea. So basically what you have to remember, they live in extreme conditions. Bacteria, as you guys know, they are single cell, and they lack, I'm talking from here about bacteria, lack a membrane-bound nucleus, and they are called prokaryotes. Prokaryotes. This is the regular bacteria that you find, for example, this one, Heliobacteria, this is, that's found, I think, in the stomach, this one, H. pylori. And this one, I don't know which one it is, but probably, I don't know where the heck this one is from, but probably it's the one found in your throat or on your skin. These are called bacteria. Okay? Now, the last of the domain, it's called eukarya. So these two right here used to be only 2 domains, eukaryotes and prokaryotes. But then prokaryotes were broken down into archaea and bacteria, okay? Then the third domain, it's called eukarya. It's basically could be either unicellular or either multicellular. They have a nucleus. That's the main feature of eukaryotes. Eukaryotes have nucleus. Prokaryotes of bacteria lack no nucleus, no nucleus or membrane. That's what I mean by that, okay? So there's no nucleus. Now the last part, which is the scientific method. We've done it in the lab. What is scientific method? That's basically a method that we use in science to explain an observation or an experiment to see if it works or it doesn't work. Now for scientific method, there is 5 steps. Observation was the first one, hypothesis the second one, experimental setup or part is the third one. Then you have data and analysis, the fourth one, and the last one is conclusion. And here 2, 2, 4, 5, it's right there. Here we have an example of the use of scientific method. Now, I hope you guys have done already that lab homework, that virtual lab, and that was also an example of scientific method used to explain an experiment. Now, for the experiment right here, basically what it shows you is how fertilizers impact the life in the water in the Gulf of Mexico. Now here, you guys can see if you read, it says hypoxic zone. What's a hypoxic zone? A hypoxic zone is basically hypo means low. Oxic, which is the last word, part right there, means comes from oxygen. So this means hypoxic zone, low in oxygen. So then if there's low oxygen, there's a lot of death. Right there, a lot of death, because most organisms survive on oxygen. Water has oxygen, not as much as in the air, but there is oxygen. There is about 1% oxygen in waters. Now, the healthy waters. Now, what happens here, basically, it shows you what it happens with the excessive use of fertilizers, mainly nitrogen. Nitrogen is used to grow crops. Nitrogen is used to grow crops right there. So nitrogen actually can end up in the waters. Now, right here, if you look, you can see there is a river in the middle of America. You see this little thingy right here that goes this line? That's the Mississippi River, Upper Mississippi. So all these waters from here, or these little mini rivers, end up actually in Mississippi, the biggest river in the United States. Now, along this Mississippi River, there is a lot of farming, That's where we get our veggies from. Now, when farmers use nitrogen fertilizers, the problem is what? A lot of it will not end up in the soil, or if they use extra fertilizers, a lot of it will end up in the river when there is rain, would leach. The word is called leaching in the river. Now, what's going to happen? Once you use excessive nitrogen, leads to water pollution. Where is the water pollution? It's actually right here in the Gulf of Mexico, where it creates that hypoxic zone and is going to kill a lot of organisms. Now, scientists came up with a hypothesis on how, or they observed that actually if they grow or they replace the growth, or they rotate crops, they can actually enrich naturally the soil. So they noticed that if they use pea plants, which produce nitrogen on their own, basically on the roots, they have this little structure which are called nodules. These nodules actually contain some bacteria, a type of bacteria that can grab nitrogen from the air and turn it into nitrogen usable in the soil for the plants. So if you grow pea plants before winter and then you turn it into the soil, it produces a natural fertilizer. Nitrogen would be the natural fertilizer for the next crop, which is winter wheat. Okay? Now, then what did they do? They set up a control group and an experimental group. This is part of the experiment right here. Okay? So here they set up the control and the experimental group. Now the control group is basically the one that nothing happens. So they went in an area, they got a plot of land, and then they broke it down into 4 plots, same size, and it has to be in the same area because you have to have exactly the same condition, and we apply the same amount of water and everything else. The only difference between these plots, these are the plots, 1, 2, 3, 4. The only difference between these plots here, it's the actual amount of nitrogen they use. So this is the control. This is plot 1, plot 2, plot 3. Now for the control, they done nothing. They just left the soil the way it is. Then for number 1, plot, which is this one here, 1, 2, 3. That's the one that they add fertilizer at this concentration, 45. For the next one, they added at 90 kilogram, which is double the amount. And then for the last one, they put the pea plants, or they planted the pea plants. Now they keep doing this process over time. It took about 3 years for this process. So in the before winter, they would plant pea plants, okay? Then they will turn the soil, then they plant wheat after that. And then what they did here, I'm showing you what that zone means, guys. And if you want to read, go ahead and read it, because it's really interesting what it happens, how basically you deprive the waters of oxygen and you actually create the dead zones right there. That's what is called a dead zone. Now, what they did basically, they constructed a graph for the overtime amount of crop that they collect. Now, if you look right there, gray is no nitrogen, number 1, number 2, number 3. Number 3 is the one with the pea plants. Now, when you look right here, no nitrogen added. What happened by year 3? It's very tiny. Mostly the whole soil was depleted and there is nothing there. When you look at nitrogen fertilizer, 45 and 90 right there, 45 and 90. What happens over time? These ones also go down. Look how very little it is there. Now, why do they go down? Because eventually this nitrogen fertilizer becomes toxic to the soil, and then usually plants don't really like it. They don't grow anymore. Also, if you look at pea plants, what happened right here? First year, crop was lower than the other ones, very little. But then what happened the next years? Look at the crop, how high it went. So basically, which one would come out to work better without producing toxic waste and pollution in the water? Pea plants, because that's a natural source of actual enriching the soil. And also the productivity is way much off the top right here. If you look, it went from really low here to really high, which is way higher even than these parts right here for the previous crops, the previous years. So what they did, they collected the data, they weighed the wheat plants in the spring, and then came up with the hypothesis. They came up with a conclusion, which agrees with the hypothesis that over time right here, pea plants will actually naturally enrich the soil. After the first year, the hypothesis was not actually correct, because if you look here, all the other ones have more crops, or better crop, amount of crops. All right, that's the first lecture. Any question regarding the first one? Since there is 4 or 5 of you here. Any questions? Nope, no questions. Okay, good. I like that. I guess I did a good job if there's no questions, hopefully. And hopefully you guys are not shy and just ask. All right, so now let's do the second one. Let me open up. Let me open up the nature of matter. So now we start the actual chemistry of it, the chemistry of it. Now, here we talk about the chemistry. Okay, let me stop this recording and then I can start the next one.